Hello, my name is Matt Gracie, and I'm a senior engineer at Security Onion Solutions. This video is a high-level overview of the capabilities of the Security Onion platform, followed by a demonstration of what it's like to investigate a potential incident using the built-in tools. We'll talk a little bit about the history of the platform, the data that it can handle, deployment options for your environment, and the suite of tools that are included for analysts to use to quickly and easily dig through mountains of data and see what's happening on a network and within its endpoints. Let's get started. This quote from our documentation sums up the current state of Security Onion. It's a free and open platform built by defenders for defenders. But where did it come from? Security Onion was started as a project by our founder Doug Burks back in 2008. He wanted to take all the best open source projects for network defense and bundle them together in a single, pre-configured platform to allow analysts to easily peel back the layers of their network and detect potential intruders. Over the years, different individual components of Security Onion have come and gone, some being supplanted by other open source projects, and some being written from the ground up to be part of Security Onion. But that same goal remains: to produce a free platform for threat hunting and security monitoring that can help shift the advantage away from the attackers to the people defending a network. This very simple sample architecture shows how a Security Onion deployment might look in a small enterprise. As you can see, we have an adversary out on the internet attempting to attack our network. To help us detect these malicious activities, we've got a Security Onion server set up in the data center, ingesting data from a few different sources. There's a tap inside the firewall that's sending that north-south traffic, the stuff to and from the internet, into Security Onion for analysis. There's another east-west tap set up so that we can see traffic between nodes on our internal network, like workstation to server or even workstation to workstation, to help spot lateral movement or other evidence of internal compromise. And finally, since so much network traffic these days is encrypted, we can supplement those logs with endpoint logs from our servers and workstations, as well as other logs from network equipment and cloud services. This architecture gives us deep visibility into everything happening in the environment for alerting and investigation purposes. So what does Security Onion do with the traffic it observes from those north, south, and east-west taps? Well, it's evaluated in a few different ways. First off, Security Onion includes a signature-based intrusion detection system called Suricata that watches that live traffic and compares it against a list of tens of thousands of alerting rules. Any matches will cause an alert to fire, which can then be reviewed by an analyst to determine whether it's something that merits further investigation. By default, the platform ships with the Emerging Threats open rule set. If you have a subscription for another rule set, like Emerging Threats Pro, or if you have custom detection rules that you've written yourself, it's simple to use those instead. And there's plenty of flexibility for tuning rules to your environment to eliminate false positives and reduce analyst fatigue. Second, network metadata is generated and stored for every network flow that Security Onion sees. By default, this is handled by a component called Zeek. At a minimum, this includes basic NetFlow-style data like source and destination IPs and ports. But for common application protocols, this also records metadata about those exchanges, like DNS query results, SSL certificate common names, or HTTP user agents. And this also includes a number of ICS and SCADA protocols, if you have that sort of traffic in your environment. Finally, Security Onion includes full packet capture, recording every byte of that tapped traffic for later retrieval. The included tools can retrieve this recorded traffic, from a single flow to everything from a particular IP or subnet for an arbitrary period of time, and it can be reviewed directly in the web console or exported to tools like Wireshark, Network Miner, or anything else that can read industry-standard PCAP files. In order to provide additional visibility and investigation context, Security Onion can also ingest and parse a variety of different log files. If you have Windows endpoints in your environment, which most enterprises do, Windows event logs are natively recognized and parsed when forwarded into a Security Onion environment. This includes both the built-in application system and security event logs, as well as logs generated by tools like Sysmon and PowerShell. And because our ingestion pipelines calculate and append a community ID, a hash that designates a particular network flow, you can pivot back and forth between endpoint events and the traffic that they generate on the network. The Security Onion platform also ships with the Elastic Agent, a pre-configured endpoint agent that you can deploy to Windows, Mac OS, or Linux endpoints in your environment. In addition to picking up and parsing log files from the local disk, the Elastic Agent can also generate telemetry data from the activity on that endpoint, recording things like process data, network connections, and file system activity for future review. There are even architecture options that allow you to safely and securely retrieve this data across the internet from remote endpoints, perfect for securing work-from-home laptop fleets. Logs can also be ingested and parsed from a variety of network equipment from vendors like Cisco, Palo Alto, and Fortinet, as well as open-source solutions like OpenSense. This is a great solution for smaller offices or remote locations that might not merit a full Security Onion sensor deployment, but where you would still like to have some NetFlow or firewall logs to keep tabs on what the endpoints are doing there. Many third-party software packages also produce logs that we can accept and parse. Endpoint protection products in particular offer a lot of insight into what's happening on the local system, and can often be easily integrated into the Security Onion deployment for review. Finally, many cloud services have logs that can be retrieved and parsed by Security Onion. If you've got an AWS deployment and you're looking for an easier way to review CloudTrail logs, we can help. There's also support for Google Workspace, Azure, Office 365, Okta, and many other cloud services. Whether it comes from live network traffic inspection or from log files, once all of this data is stored in Security Onion, how do analysts work with it? The tools we've developed as part of our Security Onion console, as well as outside projects like CyberChef from our friends at GCHQ, are designed to make it as easy as possible to cut, stack, rearrange, and review the available information to uncover any problematic activity on your network. We'll look at these tools during the demonstration, but I wanted to give you a little background on them here as well. Our Alerts panel is a central clearinghouse for all of the alerts that are generated by the various components of Security Onion. If some piece of network traffic matches a Suricata IDS signature, it will be flagged and listed here. So will potentially malicious files that match a Yara rule, or log events that match an enabled Sigma rule. Essentially, anything exhibiting known bad behavior that matches a detection rule will appear in alerts, which serves as a queue of sorts for the security team to work through. Dashboards are our visualization mechanism for building graphics out of the data that's been collected in Security Onion. In many cases, converting a table of search results into a pie chart or a Sankey diagram makes it much easier to spot anomalies or strange patterns. Security Onion ships with dozens of example dashboards, covering many different protocols and datasets, but this is also fully customizable if you'd like to add your own. Bundled visualizations include pie charts, bar graphs, and Sankeys, as well as the usual tables for output. And any one of these visualizations can be blown up to full screen size to see all the detail. The Hunt interface is designed around a single goal: speedy, flexible investigation. This is the primary interface we'll be using to peel apart all the layers of data and figure out what's happening in our demo environment. We can look up, correlate, stack, and count anything that Security Onion knows about, and also pivot from a hunt into other data from a packet capture or a third-party service like VirusTotal. Cases is our case management tool for recording notes and information about an investigation. But unlike most case management apps, it's not just a help desk ticketing system with some security buzzwords added as window dressing. It's actually designed to be a part of the investigation workflow. Relevant evidence can be sent to a case straight from the Hunt interface, and then the case interface can be used to launch new hunts for observables like file hashes or IP addresses. Detections is a module for writing, tuning, and managing all of the detection rules in your Security Onion environment. Whether you want to disable an alert for a particular Suricata rule, deploy a Yara rule you receive from a threat intelligence partner, or write something in Sigma to detect a particular log entry, that can all be done through this simple web interface. Finally, CyberChef is a great open source project that provides a web interface for manipulating, encoding, and decoding data, and we like it so much that we not only include it with the platform, but we integrated it as a pivot point from Hunt and PCAP to make things as quick and easy as possible for analysts. If you'd like to install Security Onion, there are several different paths you can take. The simplest, especially if you're just evaluating the platform for the first time, is to download the install ISO from our website and install it on the hardware or virtual machine of your choice. This will guide you through the install process and give you a working deployment with a minimum of fuss. Please note that you'll need hardware with a 64-bit Intel or AMD processor. It won't run on a Raspberry Pi or any other ARM-based machine. For more details on the required hardware, check the documentation on our website for a full list of minimum specs. Another option is to do a network installation on top of an existing Linux distribution. Because Security Onion's internal architecture is a set of containers, it is possible to download and install them on top of an already configured server. Check our documentation for more details on which distributions work best for this model and how the disk should be partitioned. Please keep in mind that this is an unsupported installation option. If you're planning to use this in a production or an enterprise environment, you should install from the ISO instead. If you'd like to use Security Onion in the cloud, we have virtual appliances available in multiple major cloud computing environments. This can make installation much faster, but there are some cloud-specific wrinkles in the installation process that you should be aware of. Check our documentation for details. Finally, we also sell a variety of hardware appliances with Security Onion pre-installed. This is the easiest way to set up a production deployment, as the hardware is already vetted and certified to handle your specific use case. If you'd be interested in this option, there is material available on our website at securityonion.com/hardware. Security Onion can be deployed in several different architectures depending on your needs. If you're just getting your feet wet with Security Onion and want to try it out, a great place to start is with an import node. As the name suggests, an import node doesn't monitor live network traffic. Rather, it lets you import PCAP or EVTX files and analyze them to generate the same alerts and metadata that you would see if it had been live network or log traffic. Even if you have a full Security Onion deployment available, it can be handy to still keep an import node installation around for ad hoc analysis of PCAPs generated by firewalls or other network equipment. The most basic deployment model for analyzing live traffic is a standalone node, where all of the Security Onion components are running on the same server. This works really well for simple deployments, like a home network or a small business environment where all of the network traffic is at a single physical site. If you're dealing with a more complicated environment, though, a fully distributed deployment might be a better match. In a distributed deployment, the different functions of Security Onion are broken out among multiple servers. There's a manager node, which hosts the web console and the configuration settings for the grid as a whole, and then there are minion nodes performing specialized functions. Forward nodes listen to live network traffic, and search nodes work together to record that data in Elasticsearch. And there are other special purpose nodes that might be useful to you, depending on the particulars of your environment. Please check our documentation for more details. An important thing to remember is that the analyst interface, the Security Onion console, is the same no matter what the underlying deployment model looks like. So you can engineer the solution that's best fit for your environment without impacting your analysts and their workflows. One last thing I'd like to mention before we get to the demonstration. While most of what I talk about in this video is part of the base Security Onion platform, we also have a set of licensed enterprise features that we call Security Onion Pro. This includes a long list of features, including OIDC integration for single sign-on with your Active Directory or Cloud Auth provider, full disk encryption, compliance with STIG and FIPS security guidelines, the ability to configure alert notifications via email, Slack, or other channels, and guaranteed message delivery using Kafka for communication between nodes. There's also API functionality, which exposes all of the features and data of the platform programmatically for integration into the rest of your security infrastructure. There's also active management of long-running Elasticsearch queries, a manager of managers function to allow multiple SOC deployments to be viewed and controlled from a single console, an MCP server for integration into your local AI model of choice, hypervisor functionality for running multiple virtual Security Onion nodes on a single piece of hardware, a new reporting function for creating, generating, and exporting reports from your collected data, and the Onion AI virtual assistant. In addition to all of these features, a Pro license also comes with health checks and enterprise support for your grid, so Security Onion Solutions can help you get everything up and running properly. If you'd like more information on the current list of Pro features and how they're licensed, please visit securityonion.com/pro. Now that you're a little more familiar with the Security Onion platform and its capabilities, it's time for a brief demonstration. Everything that I'm going to show here is standard out-of-the-box functionality. The deployment is a simple one, monitoring the internal traffic on a network and ingesting Windows events and telemetry from the endpoints. We're going to walk through the Security Onion console interface and look at the analyst tools, and then perform an alert-driven investigation workflow to show how those tools actually function in practice. Let's get started. Let's begin by logging into the Security Onion console, or SOC. I'm logging in with a simple username and password, but there is also support for multi-factor authentication using an authenticator app, or the ability to authenticate using security keys for passwordless login if that's preferred in your environment. Also, just a note, I'm using the Security Onion desktop for this demonstration. That's a Linux-based workstation image that can be easily installed from the same Security Onion ISO as the platform itself. As you can see, the different components of the Security Onion platform are listed along the left-hand side of the browser window. We're currently looking at the default overview screen, which can be easily customized if you would like to present different text or links to analysts when they log into the console. Let's take a moment to walk through the different tools that are available from this menu. The Alerts console is a clearinghouse for the alerts generated by the various components in Security Onion. Anytime a detection rule fires, it will generate an alert on this page. The intended workflow is that this will serve as a queue of potentially malicious events for your analyst to work through. We will return to this interface shortly to investigate an alert and demonstrate the capabilities of the platform. Dashboards are a visualization component built into Security Onion to allow analysts to easily generate graphs and charts from the log data in the platform. There are several dashboards already built in that correspond to different log types or network protocols, with helpful visualizations already configured and ready to go. These are all fully customizable as well, so if you'd like to add a custom dashboard for your environment, it's just a matter of writing the queries, and then it will be accessible to everyone. For example, if we want visualizations related to the HTTP traffic on our network, we can just click the drop-down here and select the HTTP protocol. You see here we've got a bunch of data about the HTTP sessions observed in this environment, including things like HTTP methods, user agents, virtual hosts, and so on. Now, all of these tables and graphs are fully interactive. So if I want to do something like exclude traffic on port 80 and only use HTTP sessions on non-standard ports, that's easy to do. I can just click on 80 and then exclude, and all of these visualizations will update to exclude that data. Now I see I've got a BitTorrent user agent here, so I can just click include on that and see only the non-port 80 HTTP traffic from an endpoint that identifies itself as a BitTorrent client. And here we have all the data about the traffic from that client, which virtual hosts it contacts, which HTTP request methods, which URIs, which ports. This tool allows the analyst to drill into the data gathered by the platform with maximum speed and flexibility, looking for potential threats. The next tool is Hunt. Like dashboards, Hunt is designed to provide the analyst with a fast, flexible interface to analyze and investigate data. We can get a summary view of all the data types collected by the platform. Here you see all the logs sorted by their source module and the data type that they contain. And some of the different data points also have pre-configured queries, like connections. Here you see all of the different protocols identified by the Zeek metadata parsers, grouped together with their destination ports. This is a great place to start a threat hunt. Looking for client data traveling on non-standard ports is a good way to find misconfigured or malicious traffic. If we want to once again see all of the HTTP traffic and what ports it's on, we just need to click Include on HTTP. It will add it to our query, and then it will all be presented in this table. As you can see, we've got HTTP traffic on ports 443, 2869, 8082, and more. There may well be something there worth investigating, and we were able to find these outliers in a mountain of data with just a couple of clicks in the Hunt tool. There's a lot of functionality in Hunt, and we'll explore it more in a few minutes when we investigate an alert in the console. The next tool is Cases. This is a case management tool that's built into the platform for analysts to record notes and evidence during an investigation. It's designed to not only be a documentation platform, but also an integrated part of the workflow to pivot out of for future hunts. We'll explore this one more shortly as well. Next is Detections. Detections is a centralized interface for writing, enabling, and tuning the different detection rules in your Security Onion deployment, independent of the language that they're using. The Network IDS rules from Suricata, the Yara rules for Strelka, the Sigma rules looking for suspicious log entries. All of them are collected here in Detections where analysts can easily read, understand, and tune them. And we've built an integration with the Alerts interface as well, so users can easily pivot from an alert to tune the rule that generated it. This is a huge jump forward in making it easier to tune Security Onion to the particular needs of your environment, and we're very excited about it. We'll look at this more in the demonstration as we write a fresh detection to deploy in our grid. The next tool is PCAP. By default, Security Onion records all of the network traffic that it sees and makes it available through this web interface for later retrieval. This is, of course, tunable if there are certain ports, IPs, or subnets that you would prefer to ignore. During our investigation, we will see how individual network flows can be retrieved. This interface allows for retrieving larger PCAP samples. For example, if you want all of the traffic from a particular host, or all of the traffic on a particular port, you can make a manual request through this tool and then either view it in the web console or download it as a standard packet capture file to review in another tool. The grid screen is a summary of the Security Onion deployment and all of its nodes. This demonstration deployment is very simple. Just a single standalone node running 2.4.190. If I expand by clicking on the caret, you'll see there's much more information available, including the status and uptime of the various components on this node, a link to ingest arbitrary PCAP or EVTX files for analysis, a link to the InfluxDB operational monitoring dashboard for this server, and a button to force a reboot if this node has recently applied an update that requires one. And if you're running Security Onion appliances, there will be a photo here on the right-hand side of the front and back panels to reference when describing cabling or hardware requests to your data center engineers. This Downloads page includes Elastic Agent installers for Windows, Mac OS, and Linux endpoints. These are pre-configured for your particular Security Onion grid, so installing the agent and configuring the Security Onion grid to accept its traffic is all that's necessary to start collecting logs and telemetry from the machines on your network. The default agent policy includes OS query functionality for live investigation of endpoints, as well as many default integrations for ingesting logs from other equipment and services. If you'd like to collect logs from machines that are not on your local network, like remote user laptops, that can be done with a fleet node in your DMZ. See our documentation for details. Finally, the configuration menu allows you to configure every aspect of the Security Onion grid. There's a list of common configuration tasks here on the right, or you can simply search for the options that you need in the filter box here. And there are all the configuration options with the word firewall in them. If you want to make a change, you just enter it in a web form and it's automatically pushed to the entire grid in a matter of minutes. The administration menu also allows you to configure things like the user accounts on the system, your Security Onion Pro license, add nodes to the grid, and so on. Check out our documentation for more details. The tools below this horizontal line on the left-hand side are outside software projects that we include as part of Security Onion. Kibana, of course, is the standard reporting and visualization tool that comes from Elastic. The next two entries, Elastic Fleet and OS Query Manager, are for interacting with and configuring the Elastic agents that you've deployed in your environment. InfluxDB is an operational monitoring component that tracks things like disk usage and CPU utilization, so you can make sure that your grid is healthy. CyberChef, which we'll demonstrate shortly, is a Swiss Army knife for encoding and decoding data. And finally, Navigator is a local display of the MITRE ATT&CK Enterprise Matrix, with overlays for the Suricata and Sigma rules that are deployed in your environment. This generates a heat map of your alerting coverage to help with gap analysis and shaping your detection engineering efforts. Now that we know what all the tools are, let's take a look at how they work together. We're going to be demonstrating an alert-driven investigation, so let's start by clicking on the link for the Alerts console. In the upper right corner of the screen, you see the time selector, where you can configure the time period for which you want to view alerts, either relatively, as in the last 24 hours, or absolutely, as in last Thursday from 2 to 4 p.m. By default, the alerts themselves are listed below and grouped by the name of the alert and the component that generated it, along with the severity of the alert according to the rule. In this case, I see that there are multiple alerts for Golang/Sandcat plugin activity, so let's take a look at that one. For more information on the alerting rule, we can click on this I next to the name and it'll populate the panel on the right. This will update with a summary of the rule and how we've tuned it in our environment. Every one of the thousands of detection rules that come with Security Onion have one of these AI-generated summaries, explaining its purpose in plain English. We see that this rule is intended to detect beaconing activity by the Sandcat implant, so that seems worthy of further investigation to determine whether there's something malicious on this endpoint. We can drill down into the individual alerts by clicking on the count attribute to see if these are all being generated by the same client and server. Scrolling through the alerts here, these all seem to be between the same source and destination IP and port. The source port is remaining constant, which to me looks a little odd and verifies that it might be beaconing or C2 behavior. This merits a deeper look, so I'm going to click on the triangle icon here to escalate one of these alerts into cases and start building a record of the investigation. As you can see, escalating that Sandcat alert has opened a new case, which by default has the name of the escalated alert. This can be changed to whatever matches your internal record-keeping standards. If we open the case itself, you'll see that there are several different sets of information contained within the case, including markdown formatted comments on this tab, as well as a list of the events from within Security Onion that have been copied into the case as evidence. Because we just opened this case by promoting a single alert event, that's the one that's listed here. All of the attributes of this event have been copied into the case as a record of the investigation. Another component of a case in Security Onion is what we call observables, which are individual artifacts or indicators of compromise that can be recorded and then used in the future for writing detections or future threat hunting. In this case, since the alert we escalated contains source and destination IPs, those have been extracted from the event data and added as observables here in our case. Now that they're listed as observables, we could use this crosshairs icon to launch a new hunt for other occurrences in our environment, or use the lightning bolt icon to enrich our case with data from analyzers. Analyzers are plugins for third-party services that can look up an observable and return data. For example, the built-in Spamhaus analyzer will look up an IP in the public Spamhaus API and tell us whether it's malicious. Security Onion ships with about a dozen analyzers by default, and we've got documentation available to help you write your own for internal or commercial services that you use in your environment. Now that we've opened a case to record our findings, let's go back to the Alerts tab and continue our investigation. Because this looks like C2 or beaconing behavior, it would be helpful to see what the traffic actually looks like. Fortunately, Security Onion has packet capture capabilities, so we can look at individual network flows and see the byte-by-byte data that was being transferred. At first glance, this data appears to be encrypted or obfuscated somehow. But this string ends in two equal signs. That looks a lot like base 64 encoding to me. Fortunately, Security Onion includes CyberChef, which is an excellent tool for encoding and decoding data, including base 64. It's actually integrated into the platform so seamlessly that we can pivot to it directly from this PCAP screen to decode the payload. The data from that PCAP is in the upper right pane of the window, the input box. We just need to tell CyberChef to apply a base 64 decoder to it, and we should see the content down below in the output box. And there we have it. Since this payload was only encoded and not encrypted, we're able to easily decode it and read its contents. Among other things, we see a file name here, updater.exe. Let's make a note of that for now. We might want to add it to our case later as an observable. Before we proceed, let's take a look at a couple of the features here in the Alerts tab. As you can see, we've got a long list of these Sandcat alerts here, which from the timestamp appear to be triggering pretty frequently. If we want more details on one of them, we can open it up with this caret on the left. The Alert Details tab gives us some more in-depth information about the alert, including enrichment like the GeoIP data for the destination IP. Scrolling down, we also see Network Data Decoded, which is a snippet of the packet capture that caused the alert to fire in the first place, along with the Network Community ID information, which we'll return to in a moment. Any of these field values can be used as pivot points. So for example, if you wanted to move from here to hunt for other alerts generated with the same destination ASN or rule category, you could easily do that. The second tab here, Guided Analysis, gives us access to the playbook function in Security Onion. Starting in version 2.4.160, we integrated support for the Human-Centered Investigative Playbook standard. What this means is that every alert in SOC comes with a set of investigative prompts for analysts to use as a guide. This first prompt, for example, asks, what was the complete HTTP post request to the /beacon endpoint, and includes a table with the results. These are 5 results for this particular network flow between the compromised endpoint and the C2 server. You'll notice that there's a blue crosshairs icon here. Clicking on that will open the predefined playbook query in a hunt window so you can see all the results rather than just the top 5. As you can see from the counter in the top right here, there are actually 22 results for this query, so we can dig into those if we like. Progressing through these questions, we see a lot of queries that would help shed light on the investigation. Does this host normally communicate with this server? What DNS queries did it make before the connection? What other connections did it make? Are there other related alerts? These playbooks are not intended to be exhaustive, to cover every aspect of an investigation, but they can be a big help to junior analysts to help as a guide, and can even help more experienced investigators make sure that they're not missing a step or a pivot while looking at an alert and building a timeline. And best of all, you can also write and deploy your own playbooks for detection rules. So if there's a particular process or procedure that you want your analysts to follow, you can write that in a simple YAML syntax and add it to Security Onion. Check out our documentation for more details. With that said, we're going to do a little more manual investigation on this alert, so let's continue with that process. As we saw earlier in Alert Details, the different network logs that are collected are tied together with a piece of metadata called a community ID. The community ID is a hash of the source port, source IP, destination port, destination IP, and transport protocol of a network flow. Since the platform generates these for most network logs, we can use it to correlate together different datasets that contain information about the same network flow. Let's see what else we have about the flow that generated this alert. As we learned earlier, this is the hunt interface, which is the component of Security Onion that's designed to empower security analysts to sort, stack, and dig through all the data collected by the platform. In this case, we've launched a new hunt for anything related to the community ID of the network flow that caused that suricata alert. Correlate comes with a bunch of handy visualizations and tables already configured to make it easier for the analyst to make sense of the results. Looking at the event module table here, you see we've got a bunch of suricata alerts that were triggered by this flow, along with some Zeek logs, an endpoint log, and a pfSense firewall log. Over on the right, under Event Dataset, we see that the endpoint log is network related, which makes sense. That's the endpoint log that would generate a community ID. Let's click on that and include so we can concentrate on that one record. Scrolling down, we see the endpoint log here at the bottom. And look here, the process that launched this network traffic was named updater.exe. Looks like that encoded payload was listing the name of the implant that was generating it. Let's escalate this record into our case so we can preserve it as part of our investigation. The endpoint events that we're collecting via the Elastic Agent are extensive, and they're also tied together using a piece of metadata. In this case, there's a process GUID that's recorded as part of every log entry for this particular running of updater.exe. If we want to see the other log files related to it, we can do that with process info. You see now I have a second event, an endpoint.events.process event that includes the name of the parent process that launched updater.exe, which is cat.exe. Let's preserve this in our case as well. Scrolling over, it looks like this cat.exe was running from our user's downloads directory. It seems likely that this was a Trojan or other piece of malicious software that was downloaded by the user, which then downloaded and executed that updater.exe process. Let's see what other logs we have related to this cat.exe program. What we've done here is launched a new hunt for the string cat.exe. That means that independent of log type or field name, anything we have in the logs containing that string will be returned. And we've got quite a bit here. There are endpoint logs, Windows event logs, and logs generated by Security Onion components Strelka, Suricata, and Zeek. Let's start with the endpoint file logs. We see that there's a file creation event here for user's public updater.exe, and the process name is cat.exe. So we were correct. Our implant that was beaconing out was both written to disk and executed by the cat.exe download. Let's escalate that to our case. Now, if we take a look at the Zeek logs related to that cat.exe file, we see here there's a single Zeek.http record. Here we see the user connecting to the web server vorpal.jabberwocky.org on port 8000, using the Microsoft Edge browser, and downloading a file called cat.exe, which has a MIME type of DOS exec. This is how the first stage got into our network. Let's save this for the investigation as well. Let's also add that domain name, vorpal.jabberwocky.org, as an observable in our case. That will help us find other endpoints in the environment that might be reaching out to that domain, as well as helping us to build a detection for it later. Now, since Zeek often writes multiple logs for the same network flow, we should use the correlate tool again here to see what other information we have about this file download. Scrolling to the top, you see we've got logs here from Zeek, we've got logs from pfSense, and we've got logs from Suricata. Again, these are all logs related to the initial download of cat.exe, not its subsequent execution. If we use include to concentrate on the Zeek file log, in this file metadata record, we'll see information about the actual cat.exe file, including things like file hashes. Let's add this event to the case as well. We may be able to find the second stage, updater.exe, in these records as well. Let's see if there are any other DOS executables downloaded from this IP. And now you see we have 2 file records instead of just one. This smaller 26 kilobyte file is the cat.exe that we saw before. This larger 6 megabyte file is most likely the second stage that was saved as updater.exe. Let's record that in our case as well. Now if we look at the details here, we see the original file name is sandcat.go-windows, which matches the alert that we started with. Also, the MD5 and SHA-1 hashes of the file are here. We can pivot from those over into a lookup service like VirusTotal to confirm whether this file is recognized as malicious. While VirusTotal is included on this menu by default, I just want to mention that this is fully customizable if you have some other API-driven service in your environment that you'd like to use for these sorts of lookups. And there we go. A majority of antivirus vendors have classified this file as malicious. So let's take a moment to summarize what we've discovered so far. We started with an alert that an endpoint on our network was generating traffic consistent with a Sandcat implant beacon. We investigated, discovered that the traffic was being generated by a program called updater.exe on the endpoint system, and that updater.exe was a second stage payload that was written by cat.exe, which our user downloaded via a web browser connection to vorpal.jabberwocky.org and then executed from their download directory. We confirmed with VirusTotal that updater.exe is a Sandcat implant, and we saved all of this information from the investigation in case management so we can refer to it later. Now that we know where this malicious software came from, we can use the endpoint logs to see what else it did on the endpoint besides generating that beacon traffic. For that, we're going to use our Dashboards tool. Dashboards is a visualization component in SecurityOnion that allows the analyst to quickly model data collected by the platform. There are many dashboards that come built in. The one we are going to use is Elastic Agent Process Events. Clicking on this will populate the graphs and visualizations below with the telemetry data that's been generated on endpoints and then stored in SecurityOnion. Since we're looking for processes that were launched by updater.exe, let's type that into the filter box here at the top of the group metrics. Now, we want to find that file listed under process name. That table is down here near the bottom of the page. Once we find that, we can click on it and use include to limit the results in these visualizations to processes named updater.exe. Now that these graphs and tables have updated, you'll notice a few things. First, the only computer where this updater.exe file is listed as a process is mbishop110, which is the endpoint that we've been investigating. That's good. It means that this is not running in the background on some other endpoint. The scope of our incident response right now is just this one computer. Second, you'll notice that it's only running under mbishop's account. There's not a service account or anything that's been hijacked to run it. which again is a good sign that cleanup of this malware shouldn't be too involved. Scrolling down, you'll see that this process, updater.exe, has run once in our environment, and the parent process is named cat.exe, which confirms what we saw earlier. Now, we want to see all of the child processes from updater.exe, so we can click on this single event, go to Actions, and then Process and Child Info. That will use that process GUID metadata that I mentioned earlier to build a dashboard showing all of the child processes spawned by this execution of updater.exe. Right here, we've got 19 process events as well as one network event, which is probably the endpoint generating the traffic that we saw in that initial Suricata alert. Scrolling down, you'll see that process.command line actually lists all of the PowerShell commands that were executed by updater.exe. We also want to concentrate specifically on process start events, so let's include those. It looks like this PowerShell recursed through the c/users directory hunting for ping, YAML, and WAV files, did some other reconnaissance, copied all of that information into users mbishap download staged, compressed that into a zip file, uploaded it, and then deleted the zip file. Now, if we saw malicious activity like this and only had the endpoint logs to go on, we might have trouble confirming exactly what was exfiltrated. But fortunately, Security Onion includes complete packet capture, so we should be able to find that file in the recorded traffic and verify what's inside. We'll do that from within the HTTP dashboard. Much like the host process dashboard, this is a summary of all the HTTP traffic that we've seen on the network. We know from the PowerShell command that this file was uploaded to 12.12.12.122:8888, so let's adjust the dashboard to only view data related to that server. It quickly becomes evident that there are 3 URIs on this web server that we have seen contact with from our network: beacon, download, and upload. Let's concentrate on upload. And now, at the bottom of the screen, we have one HTTP metadata record, a post from 192.168.1.112 to 12.12.12.122 with a body length of about 32 kilobytes. We can click on this event and we can pivot to the corresponding PCAP. And here we see something that definitely looks like a file named staged.zip. The adversary deleted it from the endpoint where it was gathered, but we've got a copy of it here in a packet capture. Now there are a couple of options from here. The PCAP interface in Security Onion will allow you to simply download the capture as a raw file, and you can then review it in something like Wireshark or Network Miner, both of which, incidentally, are included in this Security Onion desktop that I'm using. Or you can click this toast icon to send the capture into CyberChef and analyze it from there. As you can see, there's a hex dump of the packet capture in the input pane, and then some header information and then a binary blob in the output. We want to start by extracting the files, so we'll have CyberChef do that for us. We can just add an extract file step to the recipe in the middle pane. We want to check the contents of the full zip file, so we can just use this arrow icon on the far right to turn the first of these zip artifacts into the input for the next round of analysis. Now we can clear the recipe and unzip the files in that binary blob. And there you have it. In the output window, there's a list of the files that were contained within that zip that we pulled from the packet capture. We can even render the ping file if we want to. Now, obviously, this ping file is just an example, but this could be any file being exfiltrated by an attacker. A spreadsheet of credit card numbers, for example, or a personnel record, or a text file full of passwords. If it exists in the network traffic, we can pull it back out with CyberChef. To summarize, we began with an alert about potential C2 traffic detected by Security Onion. From there, using a combination of endpoint logs and monitored network traffic, we were able to determine what that C2 implant was, how it ended up on the user's workstation, confirm the web server that it came from, check its hash to confirm that it was known malicious software, determine the other processes that it kicked off on the endpoint, and foil the adversary's attempt to cover their tracks by recovering the deleted staging file from the exfiltration traffic itself. Now, to close the incident response process on this event, we want to build a detection that will fire an alert the next time this first stage file is downloaded. There are a few different IOCs that we could use, but for this example, let's start with the domain name that it was downloaded from. If anyone on my network does a DNS lookup for vorpal.jabberwocky.org, I would like that to be flagged. To quickly build an alert in Security Onion, we can use the Detections tool. Detections allows analysts to write detection rules in the platform-agnostic Sigma meta language. Those rules are then compiled into Elastic Query Language queries, which run automatically every few minutes and generate an alert if the query returns any hits. By default, Detections is preloaded with Sigma detection rules from a public community repository, along with some Security Onion specific alerts for things like failed SOC logins or IDH node activity. Check our documentation for more details on what's included and how to add other rule sets to your installation. We want to create a new detection, so let's click on this plus sign at the top of the screen. We can select Sigma for the language, and then no license for the license. You'll notice that the input box has a sample Sigma rule loaded into it already. This can be used as a template if you're writing something new from scratch. Notice the URLs in the comment block here at the top. Those are helpful resources when writing your own detections. For this demonstration, I've already written this rule in advance, and I'm going to paste it in now, then explain how it works. As you can see, there are some fields at the top for things like the title of the rule, the description, and the author. Then we declare what data we're using for this, which is our Zeek DNS metadata records, and then the detection itself. If there is a DNS log which contains a dns.query.name field that matches the FQDN of vorpal.jabberwocky.org, we want to raise a high priority alert. That's the level field here at the bottom. We can click the Convert button at the bottom to see what the query will look like converted into Elastic Query Language. If everything looks good, we can click on Create and it will generate a detection for us. Please note that by default, the detection we've created is disabled. We just need to change its status by flipping this toggle for the query to go live and start generating alerts. Now, if any endpoint on our network queries that domain name from this point forward, we'll get an immediate alert in Security Onion to investigate. We can write these Sigma rules to trigger for anything in Security Onion, whether those IOCs come from network or endpoint data. It's a very powerful tool to allow your analysts to write detections from the results of their investigations. In addition to this alert investigation workflow, Security Onion is also designed for speedy, flexible, ad hoc threat hunting to support analysts looking for previously unknown threats. Hunt and dashboards in particular can be excellent starting points for looking for unusual or anomalous behavior in your environment. Let's start a hunt with a simple hypothesis that adversaries may attempt to hide their traffic by using non-standard ports to transport data. In order to test this hypothesis, we'll begin with the HTTP dashboard. This is the main dashboard screen, so we just need to select the HTTP one. And then to check our hypothesis, we'll need to remove the port 80 logs from our dashboard view. Notice that all of the visualizations have refreshed to take this change into account. Now, almost all the virtual hosts are raw IP addresses rather than domain names, which is a bit suspicious. I noticed that a lot of this traffic is destined for port 443, which is also usually reserved for HTTPS traffic and might be a sign of an intruder trying to avoid egress filtering. Scrolling to the URIs that are requested, I see a couple that appear to have desktop PC machine names encoded in them. That seems like something worth investigating, so I'll narrow my search to one of those. Now I can see that all the traffic to this URI has the same destination virtual host. Let's pivot a little bit and see all the traffic to that host, not just the one URI. So I've included that virtual host in my query and removed the URI, which means I should see all traffic destined for 203.176.135.102 on port 8082. Scrolling down to the events at the bottom of the screen, this traffic appears to be all post requests coming from different source IPs and ports with the same destination. If we sort by request body length, we'll see that some of these are much longer than the others. From here, we can pivot to PCAP and see what exactly this client was sending out to this web server. This appears to be a process list and other inventory information about this endpoint. Since this is being sent over a non-standard channel to an offsite IP address, it seems likely that this is malicious and that someone is attempting to gather reconnaissance information about the endpoints in our network. These endpoints sending data should all be taken offline and re-imaged. Let's pivot to Hunt and look for other information that we might have on this source IP that might help us find the original point of compromise. If this is infected with something, a good place to start might be with the files that the endpoint has downloaded. These are all of the files that have been downloaded in plain text. Let's take a look at them by MIME type. Looks like we've got 3 executables and 1 zip file in the last 24 hours, any of which could be an issue. Let's look at the executables first. Looks like the client has downloaded 2 executable files named borov.borov and update.update, which definitely seem like suspicious names, as well as a third executable whose name is not listed here. Thanks to the file carving capability built into the platform, both of these executables have been saved on the sensor's local disk so we can do further analysis on them, like detonating in a local sandbox or submitting to VirusTotal. We can also correlate on one of these records to get more information about where it came from. Looks like this file in particular came from a website called fetatech.live. From here, we can check Zeek records to determine if any other endpoints in our network have attempted to contact that site, as well as pulling out the hash values of the files themselves to hunt for elsewhere in the environment. In the end, all of this activity can be recorded in cases, as with the alert investigation example earlier, and then used as a launch point for future hunts, as well as a source of IOCs for further detection engineering. I hope you found this video useful, and that you understand how Security Onion can ingest both live network traffic and log data to give analysts visibility into everything that's happening on an enterprise network, along with the tools to investigate alerts and hunt for unknown threats. In addition to the capabilities we've seen here, there are many other free features that we didn't have time to explore in this demo, like intrusion detection honeypots, the MITRE ATT&CK Navigator, operational health monitoring, and more. Check out our documentation or YouTube channel for more details. I would encourage you to spin up a Security Onion instance yourself, either on your own hardware or in your favorite cloud provider, to get some hands-on experience with the platform and see how easy it is to use. To download the ISO and try it out on your own hardware or VM, visit securityonion.com/download. If you're interested in Security Onion appliances, you can get more information at securityonion.com/hardware. If you would like to hear more about our training offerings, There's information at securityonion.com/training about both our on-demand and instructor-led options, as well as a link to our free Security Onion Essentials course. And if you'd like more information about our support and professional services, you can get that at securityonion.com/support. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.